When it comes to talking about shooting games from the late 80s and early 90s, it's really hard to have a conversation without mentioning at least one Aleste title. The Aleste series started on the MSX computer in 1988, but would also make its way to several North American consoles as well. For the most part, Aleste games only appeared on Sega systems, with the Master System under the name of Power Strike, on the Genesis with Musha Aleste, and on the Sega CD with Robo Aleste. Thankfully, for shooter fans craving some compile Aleste action, with only access to a Super NES, Aleste also made its way to the Super Nintendo in North America under the name Space Megaforce. At the time, since the Super NES didn't have a huge catalog of great shoot-'em-up games, getting a well-built, decent shooter in 1992 might have been enough, but Space Megaforce also had all kinds of features that made it stand out from the rest of the shooters of its time, and still manages to be quite fresh, even today. Like the other games in the Aleste series, Space Megaforce has a ton of different weapons available to you. Each weapon is numbered differently and has a small descriptor on the bottom of the number. In Space Megaforce, though, you can change the behavior of your weapons by pressing the L or X buttons. Finding a weapon that suits your taste might take a bit of time, but with so many different weapons in the game, there's sure to be one to please you. In addition, each weapon has 6 levels of power. By collecting the egg-shaped chips that you see here, your weapon power will gradually rise. Your weapon power isn't only offensive, though. If your ship ends up getting hit, if you have a weapon power of 4 or more, you won't die. Rather, the weapon power that you have will be decreased by 4 levels. If you have a power level of 5 or 6, you can end up getting hit twice without kicking the bucket. If your power level is decreased to 0, though, and you get hit again, you will die. This would normally mean that you go back to a certain checkpoint within the level, but this leads us to one of the most unique features of Space Megaforce: special lives. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner that some of the lives that I have there are actually orange instead of white. What happens when a special life is used is when you die, a new ship will simply appear from the bottom of the screen, rather than going to the previous checkpoint. You can change a regular life to a special life by meeting certain conditions within the game. By shooting this green power-up item, for example, it eventually turns into a bomb. When this bomb is collected, it gives you a special life. All of these features make Space Megaforce quite a fun game to play, even if it is more or less an endurance run from point A to point B without any huge scoring mechanics. In terms of Space Megaforce's presentation, it's almost as good as the gameplay itself. For being a top-down shooter, the stages in this game are really cool, with bright colors and some awesome effects. As with a lot of early Super Nintendo games, Mode 7 is used liberally throughout. There's also an awful lot going on screen, which is amazing considering how little slowdown there is in this game. The Super Nintendo isn't exactly known for its blazing processing speed, so this is definitely a plus. Space Megaforce does suffer a bit on the sound front, though. The sound effects in the game are great, with some really satisfying kabooms, but the music doesn't sound as good as a lot of early Super Nintendo games, even if the tunes themselves are very catchy. I mean, come on, Stage 4's music is great, but even it suffers because of poor sampling. The relative ease of Space Megaforce makes it a great entry point for new players, but that doesn't mean that experienced players can't get a good challenge. In the options menu, you have 2 different hard modes that you can select from. By scrolling right, selecting hard and hyper will make everything really fast. However, scrolling left you can find tricky and wild, which not only speeds things up, but also has all defeated enemies and stage elements return fire with a hail of bullets. Additionally, there's also a short mode available at the title screen. This is basically a small score attack mode, which has you go through a series of shortened remixed levels from the game. When you complete it, it says that you're ready for the main game. But with the added difficulties, this is a good way to challenge yourself and get the highest score possible in the shortest amount of time. So when it all comes down to it, just how does Space Megaforce stack up? Let's take a look. Space Megaforce is another example of a game that kinda took me by surprise. Control-wise, it feels pretty good, with multiple speed settings. However, anything above the first notch feels a little too fast. In terms of length, Space Megaforce also has 12 stages, so it lasts a good long time. Additionally, with the short mode score attack, and your choice of 2 hard difficulties, there's quite a bit of replay. Which brings us to the challenge. On the default setting, it's actually kind of easy, so while it's great for novice players, more experienced players will want to ratchet up the difficulty on their own. Presentation-wise, with a lot of stuff going on screen with very little slowdown, and with really cool backgrounds to boot, the visuals are very strong. On the sound front though, even though a lot of the tunes are very catchy, the poor sampling drags down the score. And finally on the ingenuity front, with its awesome weapon system and its unique special lives, not to mention its twin hard difficulties, Space Megaforce is more than an interesting game to play. It is, however, very rare, as cartridge-only copies often go at auction for about $50. Every now and again you'll find a good deal though, as I did. No matter how you obtain this game though, Space Megaforce is more than worth your playtime, and comes highly recommended.
Space Megaforce, presented by Toho.